The citadel of Valoran burned with a golden dawn, its towers catching the first light of a twin-star system. Soldiers in mirrored armor lined the hall of glass and bronze, their reflections overlapping like ghosts across the floor. The air shimmered with the hum of suspended banners displaying the sigil of the Alindra Dominion, curved wings around a hollow sun. And at the center of it all stood Captain Elias Vance, the only human allowed this deep inside alien sovereignty, his heart drumming like a warning beacon beneath the weight of his dress armor. He should not have been there among them, but diplomacy had strange ways of twisting destiny. Before him, the Queen entered. Her presence dimmed the sound of the hall, as though gravity itself leaned toward her. She was nothing like the pristine myths that the Earth envoys whispered over their ration tea. Her skin was a deep cerulean, fractured with veins of faint silver light pulsing beneath the surface. Where other Alindrans shimmered with ethereal grace, she bore the scars of battle. A jagged line of cracked skin that crawled from her collarbone to her jaw, shimmering faintly each time she breathed. Her eyes, pale green with no pupils, glowed with the sadness of someone who had survived the fall of empires. The soldiers behind her bowed as one, but Elias did not. He had come to meet her gaze as an equal. The translators embedded in their neural links words softly as she spoke. "Captain Elias of Terra," she said, her voice low and melodic, yet weighted by exhaustion. "Your world has sent you to bargain peace in the ashes of rebellion. Tell me, why should I listen to your kind, when your fleets cut through my skies not a cycle ago?" The question carried no venom, only curiosity. A tired one, like a teacher who no longer expected an answer worth hearing. Elias inhaled slowly, tasting the faint metallic scent of the air. "Because we learned from what we did," he said, careful with every word. "And because I've seen enough death to know what comes next if we don't stop." A ripple moved through the crowd of Alindrans. Some turned their heads sharply, their pale hair catching the light like blades. It was unheard of to speak so plainly before their monarch. Yet the Queen only tilted her head slightly, her expression unreadable. "You presume much," she said softly, stepping closer. The scent of ozone followed her, mixed with something faintly floral, like the bloom of a plant that thrived on starlight instead of soil. "Most of your kind do." Her eyes narrowed, but then, unexpectedly, she smiled. "But I prefer honesty to ceremony." The tension in the hall fractured, like glass under strain. The guards relaxed a fraction. The light shifted as if the room itself had exhaled. Elias let out the breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. "Then maybe we can start with that," he said quietly. "Honesty." Her gaze lingered on him for several long moments. He felt the weight of it not as judgment, but as examination, like she could see beyond the surface of his skin into the tangled guilt beneath. "Your eyes," she said finally, almost to herself, "they are unguarded. That is rare even among my kind." He didn't know what to say to that, so he only nodded, because words felt inadequate under that scrutiny. The Queen turned away then, her armor shifting with a whisper of scaled metal. "Walk with me, human," she commanded, and her tone allowed no refusal. They left the hall together, the echo of their steps merging with the distant song of machinery keeping the floating citadel aloft above a sea of clouds. From this high balcony, the horizon was endless, streaked with silver and fire from the rising stars. Below, he could see the smoldering remains of a city still rebuilding. Spires bent like broken fingers, drones weaving new glass from molten fragments. "That," she said, pointing toward the distant ruins, "was my capital before your fleet burned it. I was crowned here the day after the bombing. Do you understand now why peace is not simple?" Elias followed her gaze, feeling the ache of history pressing against his chest. "Peace never is," he said. "But revenge won't rebuild this world either." She turned to him, her jaw tightening. "And you think mercy will?" Her voice cracked slightly, not with anger, but something deeper, an exhaustion that went beyond the physical. "Mercy is a luxury of those who still have something left to lose." The wind caught her hair, scattering strands of silver white across the air. For a moment, She looked less like a queen and more like a woman who had carried too many funerals in her heart. He wanted to say something, anything, to bridge the distance between their species. But before he could, a sharp chime rang from the air around them. The queen's second-in-command, a tall Alindran with eyes like liquid mercury, appeared from the corridor. "Your Majesty," she said in their language, which the translator converted instantly in Elias's ear. "The human fleet has entered orbit again. They claim it's for observation." The queen's face darkened, her hand tightening on the railing until fine cracks splintered the stone. "Observation," she repeated flatly. "A polite word for surveillance." Elias's gut twisted. He hadn't been informed of this. "I didn't authorize that," he said quickly. "They're not here to interfere." She looked at him sharply. "Then you no longer command your own kind?" Her tone struck like a blade, but he forced himself to stay calm. "They don't answer to me," he admitted. "But I'll make them listen." The queen's expression softened slightly, not with forgiveness, but with a trace of something else. Respect, perhaps. "You would challenge your own fleet for my people?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "For peace," he said. "For what's left of it." The silence between them grew heavy, filled with wind and the faint hum of engines far above. She studied him for a long while, then finally spoke. "You are a strange creature, Elias of Terra." He almost smiled. "That's what they tell me." The queen turned back toward the city, her reflection mirrored faintly in the curved metal of her armor. "Tell me," she said after a pause, "why do you care? There are millions of your kind who would prefer my species erased from the stars. What makes you different?" He hesitated, but the truth rose unbidden. "Because I was there," he said softly. "On the ground when our bombs fell. I saw your people pull children from the rubble. I saw soldiers refuse to fire back even when they could have. You call yourselves monsters in your own myths, but I saw mercy in the ashes. That's what makes me care." Her breath caught, barely perceptible, but enough. The armor around her chest expanded slightly, as though she'd drawn her first real breath in days. "Mercy," she murmured, as though testing the word on her tongue. "A word I thought belonged only to ghosts." She turned her face toward him, eyes luminous in the star-born light. "Perhaps I misjudged humanity." Elias shook his head. "No," he said quietly. "You judged us right. But some of us are still trying to change the verdict." The queen regarded him for a moment longer, and then, to his surprise, she laughed. A soft, almost bitter sound that seemed to melt the chill around them. "You speak like a poet trapped in a soldier's armor," she said. "Perhaps that's what your kind needs." He smiled faintly. "Or perhaps it's what we've forgotten." She gestured for him to follow again, and they descended a spiral of glass stairs into the lower chambers. The corridors were lined with living light, bioluminescent vines engineered to glow with shifting hues. "Your people build machines to mimic life," she said, trailing a hand along the glowing wall. "Mine shape life to mimic machines. In the end, perhaps we are not so different." They entered a vast chamber that looked part laboratory, part shrine. At its center floated a crystal sphere, pulsing with energy, the Alindran memory core, a relic said to hold the recorded consciousness of their ancestors. "This is what we fight to protect," she said quietly. "Our past. Without it, we are dust adrift in eternity." She turned to him, eyes bright. "What do your people fight for, Captain?" He hesitated. "For a future we don't yet deserve," he said. "But maybe one day will." The queen studied him for a long moment, and something in her expression softened, the faintest crack in her armor of grief. Suddenly, the chamber lights dimmed. An alarm pulsed through the air, a low, resonant tone that made Elias's stomach drop. The queen's aide rushed in. "Your Majesty, the human orbitals are charging weapons." Elias's blood ran cold. "No," he said, shaking his head. "That can't be right, they wouldn't." But the look in the aide's eyes confirmed it. The queen turned slowly toward him, betrayal flickering across her face. "You spoke of peace," she said, voice breaking like glass. "And yet your sky burns again." Elias stepped forward, desperate. "Let me stop this. Give me access to your comms. I can contact my ship." The Queen hesitated. Around them, guards raised their weapons. "He lies," one of them hissed. "He is a spy sent to distract us." But she raised a hand, silencing them. "No," she said quietly. "He is either a fool or the only human brave enough to try." She touched a console, and a holographic interface flared to life. "Speak then, Elias of Terra," she said. "Prove that your words are not ash." He leaned toward the hologram, his heart pounding. "This is Captain Vance to Earthfleet Command," he said, voice sharp. "Disarm immediately. Repeat, stand down your weapons or I'll transmit your command codes to the Alindran defense grid myself." Static crackled in reply, then a cold voice answered. "Captain Vance, you are compromised. Extraction is authorized. Stand by for..." He cut the signal, breathing hard. "They're not listening," he said. "Then they will," the Queen murmured, and to his shock, she placed her hand over his. The contact was electric, her skin cool against his. "If your kind will not listen to you," she said softly, "then they will listen to me." Her eyes glowed, the silver veins along her throat pulsing as she interfaced directly with the comms system. The holographic projection flickered, and an image of the Earthfleet Armada appeared, dozens of gleaming warships poised like knives in orbit. Elias felt her energy surge through the link, a psychic frequency woven into the transmission. "Humans of Earth," she said, her voice echoing through the airwaves, layered with ancient resonance. "Your captain speaks truth. Lower your weapons, or your next war will not be fought among stars, but within your souls." The command reverberated, shaking the glass walls. For a moment, the ships hesitated. Elias could see it, movement slowing, targeting systems freezing mid-cycle. Then, one by one, the weapons powered down. Silence returned, vast and trembling. The Queen swayed, the light fading from her skin. Elias caught her before she fell. Her breathing was shallow, the silver cracks along her body dimming. "You risked your life for me," she whispered. "Why?" He looked into her eyes and said the only truth that mattered. "Because I saw who you really are." For a moment, her fingers curled against his hand, weak but certain. Then she smiled, a faint, fragile thing that felt more powerful than any fleet. "Then perhaps humanity is not lost after all," she said softly. "Perhaps neither of us are." Outside, the dawn brightened over the broken world, casting new light upon the ruins and the towers that still stood. In that glow, Elias realized that peace, like forgiveness, was not a word but a choice, and that sometimes it began with seeing the truth behind a face the world called ugly. The Queen's breathing steadied slowly, though her skin still shimmered faintly where the silver cracks ran across her throat. Elias held her upright, the faint pulse of her heartbeat thrumming through the armor between them. Around them, the room remained silent. Only the hum of the still active communication grid vibrated through the air, echoing like a ghost of what had just transpired. The guards stood frozen, unsure whether to draw weapons or kneel. The war that might have burned half a planet had been halted by a single act of faith between two beings who, by all logic, should have been enemies. But logic had never been what defined humanity best. It was belief, irrational and fierce, that had always carried them through the dark. When she finally looked up at him, her gaze was softer than before. Less the glare of a ruler, more the curiosity of someone who'd glimpsed a truth she wasn't ready to name. "You risked the wrath of your kind for a promise that could have been a lie," she murmured, voice low and edged with fatigue. "Either you are a fool, or your faith is greater than reason." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe both," he said. "But sometimes that's what it takes to keep hope alive." Her lips curved, barely perceptible, but it was there. A shadow of amusement at the corners of her otherwise solemn mouth. Her commander, the tall Alindran with mercury eyes, stepped forward cautiously. "Your Majesty," she said, her tone unsure for the first time since he had arrived. "The humans' fleet stands down. Our sensors confirm disengagement." The Queen turned toward her, straightening slowly in Elias's arms. Then the blood of this dawn will not be spilled, she said. See to the defense lines anyway. Peace does not erase vigilance. The commander bowed, but her gaze lingered briefly on Elias before she left. It was not hostility this time, he thought, but wary respect. When they were alone again, the queen took a step away, her movements slow but deliberate. You have altered the balance of what was meant to be, she said softly. I do not yet know if that is salvation or ruin. Elias exhaled. I don't know either, he admitted. But it's a start. She regarded him silently for a moment, then turned toward the massive viewport. Beyond it, the stars had begun to fade in the growing light, but their reflection still danced across the glass of her armor. Tell me, Captain, she said without looking at him. What is it your people see when they look at us? He hesitated. Depends on the person, he said at last. Some see enemies. Others see what they fear to become. But me. He stepped closer, his reflection merging faintly with hers in the window. I see survivors. You endure the same way we do, through stubbornness, through scars. Her voice was barely a whisper when she replied. And yet your kind brings those scars upon others. The truth of it stung. But he didn't flinch. We do, he said. And every one of us who realizes that spends the rest of our lives trying to do better. Her eyes flicked toward him then, luminous and unreadable. Do better? She repeated as if tasting the phrase. A simple vow for such a fragile species. She turned fully, her pale hair catching the golden light. And yet, perhaps that is what makes you dangerous. Elias frowned. Dangerous? She nodded. You believe in redemption even when the stars have turned cold. That kind of belief bends reality. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see the fine fractal veins beneath her skin glowing in rhythm with her pulse. Perhaps that is why the galaxy fears you. Before he could respond, the floor beneath them trembled. The glass of the chamber shuddered, and the luminous vines flickered as though afraid. The queen's gaze snapped upward. Not the fleet again, Elias said quickly, but she shook her head. No, she murmured. Something below. A deep metallic groan resonated through the citadel. The alarms, still tuned to military threat frequencies, lit in crimson arcs along the ceiling. Intrusion detected, said a mechanized voice in their shared language. The queen turned sharply to Elias. Your kind would not dare a second strike. He raised his hands defensively. They wouldn't, he said. They just stood down. Her commander's voice crackled through the comms. Your Majesty. Internal breach in Sector 9, unknown lifeforms. They're tearing through the hull. The queen's eyes narrowed. Unknown? She repeated. Elias's stomach tightened. Not ours, he said. We have no ground units authorized. A silence passed between them that was heavier than any accusation. Then we are both under siege, she said grimly. She turned toward him, her armor reconfiguring along her shoulders with a metallic whisper as integrated plating folded into place. You wish to prove your intentions, Captain. Now is the time. He met her gaze and nodded once. Then let's defend your world together. They moved quickly through the descending corridors, the light shifting from gold to red as they reached the lower decks. The air here smelled of ozone and hot metal. Elindran soldiers ran past them, sleek energy rifles pulsing with violet light. As they reached the defense chamber, the floor vibrated again. A deep rhythmic pounding, like claws against steel. Elias crouched beside a shattered viewport and peered through the smoke below. From the clouds beneath the citadel, shadowy shapes emerged, climbing the anti-gravity spires. They were not human, nor Elindran. The creatures were black as vacuum, their forms rippling like molten glass, and their eyes, if they were eyes, burned with hollow blue light. What the hell are those? He muttered. The queen joined him, her face hardening. Drayan, she said. Scavengers of worlds. They devour what remains after wars. Her tone was tight with fury. They feed on memory. Elias realized, with a cold chill, that their target wasn't the city, it was the memory core. We have to stop them before they reach the archive, he said. She nodded. Agreed. She drew her blade, a living weapon that pulsed with bioluminescent veins, and it sang faintly in the air, a resonance that made his teeth ache. Stay close to me, human. They hunt thought as much as flesh. They descended into the lower sanctum, where the air was thick with energy discharge. The corridors twisted with organic architecture, living walls that responded to the queen's presence, sealing behind her as she passed. Elias followed, rifle in hand, his HUD flickering from interference. The first of the Draen burst through a side wall, shards of glass and bone scattering. Elias fired instinctively, plasma rounds sizzling through its semi-solid form. It shrieked, soundless yet felt in his skull. The queen moved with terrifying grace, her blades slicing arcs of light that burned through their dark matter bodies. When the creature fell, its body melted into liquid shadow that seeped into the floor. Don't let it touch you, she warned, her voice sharp over the sound of battle. It will take your memories. Elias ducked another strike, his armor sizzling as one claw scraped across it. Noted, he said, gritting his teeth. They fought side by side through the tightening corridors, their movements syncing almost unconsciously, the practiced coordination of soldiers who had never trained together but shared an instinct born of necessity. When the final Draen of that wave fell, the air felt heavier, like a storm building in silence. The queen leaned briefly against the wall, her hand trembling. They come for more than power, she said. They come for history itself. Elias looked toward the corridor leading to the archive chamber. Then we can't let them get through. She nodded once, determination hardening in her expression. No, she said. We will not let our ancestors fade into their hunger. They pressed forward again, deeper into the citadel's heart. The architecture grew more crystalline, the light shifting from gold to pale blue. Here, the air hummed with memory, the psychic residue of centuries of thought. It pressed softly against Elias's mind, whispering fragments of languages he didn't understand. This place feels alive, he murmured. The queen glanced back. It remembers everything, she said. Every life, every mistake, even yours now. They entered the core chamber, and Elias felt the weight of existence press down like gravity turned liquid. The memory core pulsed brighter now, reacting to the Draen presence. Tendrils of dark matter slithered across the floor toward it. The queen raised her hand, energy flaring from her palm, and the tendrils recoiled with a hiss. They're trying to overwrite the archive, she said. Erase what came before. Elias moved beside her, taking aim at the largest form rising from the shadows. A Draen larger than the others, its body fracturing into multiple shifting limbs. Then we erase them first, he said. The creature lunged, its form coalescing into a maw of blue fire. Elias rolled aside, firing into its center mass. The plasma hit, but the creature reformed instantly, energy flickering like a corrupted signal. It's adapting, he shouted. The queen stepped forward, her armor unfolding into radiant plates of silver and gold. Then so shall we, she said, her voice echoing with layered tones. She plunged her blade into the ground, sending a pulse of light through the floor. The core responded, flaring with her energy. A shock wave rippled outward, burning through the shadow tendrils. The creature screamed, its voice splitting the air, before collapsing into itself. The remaining Draen dissolved, their forms evaporating like mist in sunlight. When the silence returned, it was broken only by their ragged breathing. The memory core dimmed slowly, its glow returning to a calm pulse. The queen knelt beside the platform, pressing her palm against it. It lives, she whispered. Elias lowered his weapon. Then we did it. She shook her head. For now, the Draen never attack without purpose. Someone sent them here. She turned her gaze on him then, not accusing but searching. You said your fleet stood down. Are you certain they were not compromised? Elias frowned. Positive. But there are other factions in the Terran Council. Not everyone wanted this peace. The implication hung heavy between them. The queen rose slowly, the light from the core reflecting in her eyes. Then our enemies are the same, she said quietly. Those who fear understanding more than destruction. Elias nodded, the weight of it sinking in. Then maybe it's time we stopped fighting separately. Her expression softened slightly. You would stand with me, against your own kind? He met her gaze. If my kind is what threatens what's left of both our worlds, yes. She studied him for a moment, and then reached out, touching his shoulder. Then you will stand not as a human among Elindrans, she said softly, but as one who remembers. The words carried more power than he realized. The core pulsed once, and a faint light rose around him. A thread of memory linking him, however briefly, to the archive. Images flickered in his mind. Stars being born, cities rising and falling, Elindran children laughing beneath crystalline skies. He gasped as the vision faded. What was that? He asked. The queen smiled faintly. A gift, she said. Now you carry a piece of our memory. Proof that your heart speaks truth. He looked down at his hand, still faintly glowing. Then maybe that's what peace really means, he said quietly. Remembering each other. For a long time, neither spoke. The hum of the core filled the silence, steady and alive. Finally, she turned to him. Come, she said. You will need rest, and I must speak to my council. He nodded, following her through the now-stilled halls. The city outside was still scarred, still half-lit by repair drones and fading fires. But for the first time, Elias felt something stirring in the air that wasn't despair. It was possibility. When they reached the balcony again, the sky was turning violet with approaching dusk. The queen looked out over the horizon, her posture regal but her expression distant. You remind me of someone, she said softly, an Elindran general who once believed that peace was possible through understanding. He died before he could prove it. Elias looked at her, the faint light from the sky reflecting in her eyes. Then maybe it's up to us to finish what he started. She turned toward him, and for the first time her smile reached her eyes. Perhaps, she said. But if so, we will do it not as queen and soldier, but as equals. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and real. Somewhere far above, the human fleet drifted silently, no longer aiming their weapons, and for the first time in generations, the stars over Valoran looked peaceful. The next dawn over Valoran came quiet but uneasy, as though the world itself had forgotten how to breathe in peace. Repair drones drifted through the cloud-filled sky, their metallic wings scattering light across the rebuilt towers. The Queen's citadel still bore the scars of the Drayan assault, charred walls, ruptured conduits, the faint smell of ozone lingering in every corridor, but life persisted. The Elindrans were already rebuilding. It was in their nature to rise from ruin, just as it was humanity's. Elias stood at the balcony, watching the light expand across the horizon, and thought how beauty and devastation always seemed to share the same frame. Behind him, footsteps whispered against marble. He turned to see the queen approaching, her armor replaced by softer ceremonial garb that shimmered faintly in the morning light. Without the crown, without the layers of battle gear, she looked almost fragile, but there was nothing weak in her gaze. You have not slept, she said. It wasn't a question. Elias smiled faintly. Couldn't. Your sunrise is too loud. Her head tilted slightly, amused. Loud. He gestured to the horizon, where the twin suns rose in slow unison, painting the sky gold and violet. On Earth, dawn creeps in. Here, it roars. She stepped beside him, her gaze following his. We were born under two suns, she said softly. Our myths say that to live here is to always face the light and shadow together. Perhaps that is why we endure. Elias looked at her profile, the faint fractal cracks across her skin catching the light, like constellations drawn upon her face. And why you fight, he said quietly. Even when it breaks you. She turned to him then, her eyes searching. And you, human? What makes you fight? He hesitated, feeling the question reach deeper than the surface. Not orders, not patriotism, just the hope that someday we'll stop being the monsters in someone else's story. The queen studied him in silence for several heartbeats. "You speak as if guilt is your only heritage," she said. "But there is more to your kind than destruction." He gave a small shrug. "Maybe, but guilt keeps us from forgetting." She smiled faintly. "Then perhaps it is a mercy after all." They stood quietly for a time, the wind stirring between them. "My council will arrive soon," she said. "They will not be as forgiving as I." He nodded. "I wouldn't expect them to be." Her tone softened. "I will speak for you, but their trust is not easily earned." The chamber of the council was vast and carved from translucent stone. The ceiling arched like the inside of a living shell. Elindran advisors stood in a semicircle, their robes woven with shifting patterns of light. Elias stood alone at the center, his human armor dim among their radiance. The queen took her place upon the dais, her expression composed. "Honored elders," she began, her voice carrying effortlessly. "The human before you stayed his own fleet's fire and fought beside us against the Drayan incursion. His actions preserved our memory core." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Skepticism, perhaps even disbelief. One of the elders, his features etched with fine silver veins, leaned forward. "And we are to believe this was not manipulation?" he said. "The humans destroy cities and then rebuild them to claim gratitude." Elias felt the words like a strike, but he kept his composure. "I can't undo what my people did," he said evenly. "But I can make sure it doesn't happen again." The elder's gaze was cold. "You are one voice among billions." Elias nodded. "Maybe, but someone has to be first." The queen's eyes flickered toward him, approval hidden beneath her calm exterior. Another counselor spoke, her voice sharp. "The Drayan were not of human origin. Yet their attack came the same day your fleet entered orbit. Coincidence?" Elias met her gaze squarely. "I didn't know about them. I still don't know who sent them. But if I find out it was one of ours, I'll help you stop them." The room buzzed again, but this time the tone had shifted slightly, from accusation toward consideration. After the meeting, as the council withdrew to debate, the queen descended from the dais and walked beside him. "You spoke well," she said. He exhaled slowly. "I spoke honestly. I don't know if that's enough." "It rarely is," she admitted. "But it is a beginning." They walked together through the long hall, the faint hum of the citadel surrounding them. "Your words reached some of them," she said. "Not all, but enough to stay their suspicion." Elias nodded. "I'll take that as progress." Her lips curved slightly. "Progress, Captain, is the most dangerous word in any language. It promises too much and delivers just enough to keep us trying." Later that day, they toured the reconstruction zones. The city spread outward in concentric levels suspended by anti-gravity pylons. The lower districts still smoldered, though drones moved in organized patterns, reweaving shattered metal into seamless glass. Children played among the debris, chasing floating lights generated by their parents' tools. Elias watched, struck by how ordinary the laughter sounded even here. "They don't seem afraid," he said. The queen's gaze softened. "They have seen too much to waste time on fear." As they moved deeper into the city, a group of Elindrans bowed to the queen, their gestures formal yet reverent. One small child, her skin a lighter shade of blue, peered up at Elias curiously. "Is he the human?" she whispered to her mother. Elias smiled faintly and crouched. "I guess I am," he said gently. The child tilted her head. "Do humans dream in colors like we do?" The question caught him off guard. "Sometimes," he said, "but lately, we dream more about what we've lost." She nodded seriously, as if that made perfect sense. The queen watched the exchange with quiet fascination. "They see truth faster than we do," she said when the child ran off. "Perhaps because they have less to protect." By evening, the sky had turned indigo. They returned to the upper citadel, where the light from the twin suns had faded to a silver glow. The queen led him into a smaller chamber lined with glowing crystal vines. "I wish to show you this," she said, touching a panel. The wall shifted, revealing a narrow walkway above a pool of liquid light. Within it swirled thousands of luminous motes, memories, living data drawn from the core's resonance. This is the heart mirror, she explained. It reflects not who we are, but what we choose to remember. Elias stepped closer, watching the lights pulse like breathing stars. It's beautiful, he murmured. She nodded. But dangerous. Look too long, and it will show you what you hide from yourself. He hesitated, then looked into the pool. The motes began to shift, forming shapes. Images of Earth, of cities burning under alien skies, of soldiers screaming as bombs fell. His hands trembled. I didn't mean to, he began, but she raised a hand. The mirror chooses, she said softly. It reminds you that peace begins with truth. He tore his gaze away, breathing hard. I see why you called it dangerous. She met his eyes. You are brave to face it at all. Many turn away. He gave a small, tired smile. Bravery's just fear with a deadline. Her laughter was soft but real, echoing through the chamber like wind chimes. You are a strange creature, Elias Vance. I get that a lot, he said. She stepped closer, the light from the pool painting her skin in hues of violet and gold. You speak of peace as though it were a person you could save, she said quietly. Maybe it is, he said. Maybe it's us. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt electric, charged with something that wasn't just politics or survival. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. You see humanity everywhere, even in those who have long since ceased to be human. Before he could answer, the chamber doors burst open. The Queen's commander entered, breathless. Your Majesty, she said urgently. We've intercepted a transmission. It's from the Terran Council. The Queen's expression hardened. On what frequency? Direct diplomatic channel, the commander replied. Elias's stomach tightened. Patch it through, he said. The projection flickered into existence. An admiral's face, hard and cold. Captain Vance, the voice said. You've exceeded your authority. Stand by for retrieval or be declared defector. Elias felt the Queen's eyes on him but didn't look away from the hologram. Sir, he said evenly, the Elindrans aren't our enemy. We just fought off an attack from an unknown force. This alliance is the only reason we're all still standing. The Admiral's face didn't change. Your mission was observation, not negotiation. Your transmission earlier constituted treason. The Queen stepped forward, her presence dominating the space. If this is how you treat those who prevent war, she said icily, then perhaps your kind deserves extinction. The Admiral's image flickered. Your Majesty, humanity will not be threatened by relic monarchies. The signal cut abruptly. Silence fell. The Queen turned to Elias. They will come for you, she said quietly. He nodded. I know. You could leave now, she continued. Return to your fleet. Beg forgiveness. He met her gaze. Would you believe me if I said I won't? Her eyes softened. Yes, she said. And that is what frightens me. That night, he sat alone in the observatory, the stars reflecting off the glass dome. The memory of the Admiral's words replayed in his head, but he felt no regret. Instead, he thought of the Queen's face illuminated by the heart mirror, the way she had spoken of memory as both weapon and refuge. Humanity had come to this world to conquer, but he had found something far rarer, understanding. When she entered quietly, he didn't turn. They'll brand me a traitor, he said. They already have, she replied. He smiled faintly. Then at least I'm in good company. She joined him by the window, her reflection merging with the stars. If your people come, she said, we will not surrender easily. He looked at her. Then let me be the bridge. I'll face them before they reach you. They will not listen, she said. They might, he replied, if they see what I've seen. Her gaze lingered on him, her voice almost a whisper. And what have you seen, Captain? He met her eyes. That the fiercest queen I've ever known still believes in mercy. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence felt fragile, like a truce between hearts that had forgotten how to stop fighting. Then she said quietly, If you go, you may never return. I know, he said. But peace isn't built by staying safe. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. Then go, Elias of Terra, and remember what you carry. She reached out, placing her hand over his chest, just above the faint glow the core had left within him. Memory does not fade, she whispered, nor does truth. When he departed at dawn, the Alindran ships escorted his small shuttle through the misted clouds. From the viewport, he saw the citadel bathed in morning light, the queen standing upon the balcony where they had first spoken. For a moment, he wondered if she watched him go, or if she already looked toward what came next. The stars awaited, cold and endless, but for the first time, Elias didn't feel small among them. He felt responsible. Humanity had always looked outward to conquer. Now he would look outward to heal. And somewhere below, in the heart of a reborn city, a queen watched the sky and whispered a prayer not to her gods, but to the fragile creature who had chosen to believe in her. The stars of the Alindra system faded behind the shuttle as Elias broke atmosphere, the twin suns shrinking into two small orbs that cast faint shadows across the cockpit. The navigation display flickered with residual interference from the Citadel's defense field, but he hardly noticed. His hands gripped the controls tightly, and his heart pounded in rhythm with the ship's engine. Ahead, suspended in the darkness, waited the Terran fleet. A wall of steel and light spread across orbit like a scar encircling the planet. Every one of those ships carried soldiers who once called him comrade. Now they might call him traitor. He adjusted his comm frequency, setting it to the command channel, and tried to steady his breathing. Fleet Command, this is Captain Elias Vance of the diplomatic shuttle Sparrow. I request immediate contact with Admiral Garth, he said. Silence followed. Then static crackled, and a cold voice replied. Captain Vance, your vessel is unauthorized. Power down engines and prepare for retrieval. His jaw tightened. Negative, command. I'm carrying critical intelligence on an external threat. You need to listen before you. The transmission cut off with a sharp tone. A targeting alert flashed across his console. Damn it, he muttered. He knew that pattern, warning lock, not yet lethal. They were testing his resolve. He could run the shuttle's signal through the Alindran encryption he'd been granted, but that would expose the Alliance too early. Instead, he took a risk. To any ship willing to hear me, he said, switching to an open broadcast. I'm not your enemy. The Alindrans aren't either. We've just survived an attack by entities not of either species, something that devours thought itself. If you fire now, you're not defending Earth. You're blinding it. His words echoed through static, and for a long minute, no one replied. Then a second voice came through, softer, uncertain. Captain Vance. This is Lieutenant Harper aboard Daedalus. I served under you during the Vega campaign. Are you saying an unknown force attacked the aliens? Elias exhaled in relief. Yes, and if we keep treating them like enemies, we're handing those things the galaxy. The pause was long enough for fear to build again. Then Harper said quietly, You've got one ship listening, sir. Make it count. The comm cut, but his sensors flickered. One ship had powered down its weapons. A small victory, but it was something. The others remained armed, and a command ship moved forward, the Admiral's insignia glinting in orbit. So that's how it'll be, Elias whispered. He keyed in a secondary frequency, linking it directly to the Queen's citadel below. Her image appeared, faint and flickering, but her expression was steady. You reached them, she said. Barely, he replied. One ship's listening. The rest, not yet. She tilted her head slightly. Then I will give them reason. Before he could ask what she meant, the view behind him changed. The Alindran orbital platforms lit up, sending brilliant golden signals into the void. Not weapons, but light transmissions, a language older than words. Patterns unfolded across space like living constellations, painting history into the dark. Images of the Draen's invasion, of Alindrans fighting beside him, of the Queen standing unarmed before the core. The sight was overwhelming, radiant and raw. Elias could almost hear the whisper of 1,000 minds sharing their memory. You're showing them, he murmured. I'm showing them truth, she said. Whether they believe it is up to them. The fleet hesitated. One by one, ships slowed their orbit, watching the light unfold. But the command vessel did not. Instead, its engines flared, positioning itself between the others and the planet. A voice broke through the calm again, sharper than before. Captain Vance, you've compromised Earth's security for alien propaganda. You are relieved of duty and charged with treason. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Then let me earn the charge. He cut the comm and rerouted his signal to all ships simultaneously. If any of you still remember what we swore an oath for, then you know this isn't treason. It's duty. You can kill me, but you'll kill peace with me. A sudden flash burst across his sensors. Warning alarms blared. The command vessel had fired a kinetic slug, aimed directly at his shuttle. He barely had time to pull the controls aside. The shot grazed the hull, the impact shaking the cockpit violently. Systems screamed, lights flaring red. He fought for control, smoke rising around him. Elias! The Queen's voice came through faintly. Your signal, what happened? He coughed, flipping switches. They fired a warning shot. They mean to drag me back. He looked at the blinking status of the stabilizers. But I'm not going quietly. His fingers danced across the console, rerouting power to the engines. The shuttle spun sharply, diving beneath the fleet's formation. A dozen targeting locks appeared on his display. He gritted his teeth. Guess we're doing this the hard way. He engaged evasive thrusters, darting through the debris field of older satellites. The human ships followed, but not all fired. He recognized the restraint of hesitation. They're doubting, he murmured. Keep doubting. He opened a private channel to the Queen again. If they board me, don't intervene. If they think you're helping me, they'll see it as provocation. Her voice came soft, almost trembling. And if they kill you? He smiled faintly. Then tell them they only made my point louder. The chase lasted long minutes, the darkness cut by streaks of plasma. Finally, the shuttle shuddered as a grappling pulse hit. Magnetic clamps seized the hull, dragging him toward the command ship. End of the line, he whispered. He powered down, letting them take him in. When the airlock opened, soldiers in black armor flooded in, weapons raised. He lifted his hands. Captain Elias Vance, one barked. By order of the Terran Council, you are under arrest for treason against humanity. He met their eyes calmly. If defending peace is treason, then I stand guilty. They brought him before Admiral Garth in the command chamber. The man's face was carved from iron, his uniform immaculate. You've embarrassed your species, Garth said coldly. You consorted with the enemy, endangered classified operations, and transmitted unauthorized data to alien systems. Elias stood tall. I saved both species from extinction, he said. You're too blind to see it. Garth's lip curled. You've always been sentimental. That's why I sent you instead of a machine. I wanted to prove humans could still fail better than algorithms. Elias clenched his fists but forced his voice steady. Then maybe you should have programmed empathy into those algorithms while you had the chance. The Admiral turned to his officers. Prepare transmission to Earth Command. Inform them the defector has been secured. Begin orbital withdrawal. Elias's pulse quickened. You're leaving them? Garth didn't turn. Let the aliens handle their scavengers. We'll regroup once they've weakened themselves. Rage burned hot in Elias's chest. You're condemning them, and us. Garth finally faced him. I'm preserving the human race. By killing what makes us human, Elias snapped. You think survival is strength. It isn't. Compassion is. The Admiral's eyes hardened. Take him to the brig. As they dragged him down the corridor, the ship trembled, subtle at first, then violent. The lights flickered, alarms wailing. One of the guards stumbled. What was that? Elias demanded. A voice crackled over the intercom. Hull breach, unknown energy signatures. They're inside. Garth's orders came through immediately. All units to defense stations. Chaos erupted. The guards hesitated, then released Elias to draw weapons. He didn't wait. He grabbed the nearest emergency release, disengaging the maglocks on his cuffs. "What's happening?" one shouted. Elias didn't answer. He already knew. The Draen had followed him. The corridor split open as black tendrils tore through the bulkhead. Soldiers screamed as their memories flickered. Some dropped their rifles, eyes vacant. Elias seized a fallen sidearm and fired into the mass, the plasma rounds bursting light into the shadows. It slowed the creatures but didn't stop them. He sprinted toward the hangar, alarms echoing. "Queen!" he called through his comm, hoping the channel still worked. "They're here." The Draen boarded the fleet. Her voice came through faintly, distorted by static. "We detect anomalies above orbit. You cannot fight them alone." "Wasn't planning to," he said, gritting his teeth. "Just buying time." He reached the hangar just as the creatures began breaching through the outer walls. Ships exploded, energy arcing through the bay. Amid the chaos, he spotted a familiar emblem, Deadless. Harper's ship. He sprinted across the deck, firing at the advancing Draen. A ramp lowered, and Harper appeared, waving frantically. "Sir, get in." Elias dove aboard as the ship's shield sealed. "You're a damn sight for sore eyes," he said, panting. Harper grinned grimly. "Couldn't let them take my old captain without saying hello." As they lifted off, the hangar behind them was consumed in dark fire. "Status?" Elias asked, strapping in. "Bad," Harper said. "Those things are eating through hulls like paper." "Then we need to show them something they can't consume," Elias said. "Contact the Queen. Sync our systems to the Alindran core frequency." Harper blinked. "We're integrating alien tech? That's treason squared." "Just do it," Elias said. "If I'm going down, I'm not doing it alone." The core's signal merged with the ship's network, light threading through the consoles. The screens shimmered as alien glyphs overlaid human code. The Draen hesitated outside, sensing the frequency. "They're reacting," Harper said. "Good," Elias replied. "Let's give them a reason to retreat." He transmitted a pulse patterned on the Queen's memory resonance, the echo of unity. The Draen convulsed, their forms fracturing under the wave of living light. Through the calm, the Queen's voice returned, clear and strong. "You fight as one of us now." He smiled. "Guess I'm learning." But victory came at a price. The pulse drained their systems, lights dimming across the bridge. Harper cursed. "We're losing power." Elias grabbed manual controls. "Reroute everything to shields." The ship lurched, caught between gravity and vacuum. The Draen shattered around them like glass, but one latched onto the hull, its body burning with psychic fire. "They're not done," Harper shouted. Elias closed his eyes briefly, feeling the hum of the core still within him. Then he understood. He pressed his hand against the console, the faint glow from his chest spreading into the ship's network. "I'll feed it my link," he said. "Boost the frequency through me." The Queen's voice broke through sharply. "Elias, no. That connection will consume your neural pattern." He smiled faintly. "Then I'll just have to make it worth something." Light flared, coursing through him, pain searing down his nerves. He screamed, but the ship surged with energy, blasting the Draen free in a torrent of radiance. The swarm disintegrated, scattering like dust before a storm. Silence followed, broken only by Harper's ragged breathing. "They're gone," she whispered. Elias slumped in his chair, vision fading. "Tell the Queen," he murmured. "Tell her." It worked. Then darkness took him. When he opened his eyes again, he wasn't sure if he was alive. The world around him glowed softly, filled with shifting shapes of light. For a heartbeat, he thought he'd died. But then a familiar voice spoke, distant yet near. "You are stubborn, Captain," said the Queen. He turned, and she stood beside him, not as a hologram, but as a projection of mind within the core's memory space. "You pulled your essence into the network," she said gently. "Between life and death." He tried to smile. "Guess I'm hard to kill," She regarded him with that same unreadable expression. You gave everything to protect what was not yours. That's what makes it worth giving, he said softly. Her hand hovered near his, shimmering with light. Come back, Elias, she whispered. Your world needs to see what you've done. He looked down at his faintly glowing body, unsure if it still belonged to him. If I come back, he said, promise me something. Anything. Remember us, he said. Not as conquerors, as friends. Her eyes shone like twin suns. Always. The light surged, enveloping them both. He gasped awake aboard Daedalus, lungs burning. Harper was beside him, relief flooding her face. Welcome back, sir, she said shakily. You scared the hell out of us. He blinked, weak but alive. Guess I'm not done yet. Outside, the Drayan remnants drifted like dying embers, fading into the void. The fleet regrouped, silent but no longer hostile. The Queen's voice came faintly through the calm. The storm has passed. Elias smiled, voice hoarse. Then let's make sure it never returns. Below them, Valoran shone brighter than ever, its towers gleaming beneath the twin suns, rebuilt not as monuments of power, but as beacons of remembrance. For the first time, humanity and Elindra stood not in opposition, but in shared survival. And somewhere deep within the ship systems, the pulse of Elias's memory link still glowed faintly, proof that peace could live inside those willing to fight for it. The storm had passed, but its echoes lingered across the stars like ripples in still water. The Drayan were gone, their void-born hunger dispersed into the fabric of space, but the memory of their assault clung to every system they had touched. Valoran's skies glowed a deeper gold now, and the floating citadel shimmered with renewed energy as if the world itself had inhaled for the first time in centuries. The human fleet remained in high orbit, scarred but silent, unsure whether to withdraw or stay. Elias sat within the medbay of the Daedalus, watching the holographic projection of the planet turn slowly above his bunk. He could still feel the faint pulse in his chest, the residue of the core's light flickering like a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. Harper entered quietly, her boots whispering against the floor. She held a datapad against her chest and looked almost reluctant to speak. Command's been silent since the attack, she said. The Admiral didn't make it. Bridge collapsed during the breach. Elias nodded slowly. I figured. There was no satisfaction in the knowledge, only a quiet weariness. And the rest of the fleet? Holding position, Harper said. Some want to retreat. Others are waiting to see what you'll do. He laughed softly, the sound more exhale than humor. Me? I'm just a captain with a broken ship. She shook her head. Not anymore. You're the only one who's spoken with the Elindrans and lived to call them allies. He turned back to the projection. Allies, he repeated. That's a word we haven't earned yet. Harper studied him for a moment, then said quietly, She's asking for you. Elias looked up sharply. The Queen. Harper nodded. She sent a transmission directly to your frequency. Said the city is stable. And she requested your presence for something called the Covenant of Dawns. He frowned. Sounds like a council matter. Maybe, Harper said. But she made it clear it was for you. Hours later, he stood again upon the balcony of the Citadel, the same place where he had first faced her. The sky was alive with silver banners of light stretching from tower to tower, signals of unity broadcast across every continent. The Queen waited near the edge, her armor gleaming faintly, her expression calm but solemn. When she turned, her eyes caught his and held them. You returned, she said simply. You asked, he replied. And besides, I had a promise to keep. Her lips curved faintly. So you did. She gestured toward the horizon, where ships, Elindran and human alike, hovered in quiet formation, their lights interwoven like constellations. We gather here today to end what began in fire, she said. Elias stepped beside her. The Covenant of Dawns, he said. Sounds ceremonial. It is more than that, she said softly. It is a vow written not on paper but in memory. The core will bind our histories together, ensuring that neither race can erase the other's truth again. He nodded slowly. A memory treaty. Yes, she said. Our pasts have always been weapons. Now they will be witnesses. They descended into the grand hall, where Elindran elders and human officers stood in equal rows. The floor beneath them was a living mosaic of shifting light, the core's resonance forming patterns like woven starlight. At the center, a raised platform pulsed faintly with energy. The queen stepped forward, her voice carrying across the chamber. For generations, we have defined strength as dominance. But today, we learn it is endurance, the courage to remember instead of erase. She turned toward him. Captain Elias Vance of Terra, step forward. He did, the murmurs of both species following him like tides. The queen extended her hand. Your blood carries the spark of our memory now, she said. By linking it with the core, you will make the first bridge between our worlds permanent. Elias hesitated, feeling the weight of what she was asking. If I do this, he said quietly, my link becomes part of your history. There'll be no going back. There never was, she said gently. He smiled faintly. Then let's make it count. He placed his hand in hers, and together they pressed their palms against the core's surface. Light exploded outward, flooding the hall in waves of gold and blue. Elias felt the connection surge through him again. Familiar and vast. Memories cascaded like waterfalls. The queen's coronation amid ruins, children learning to rebuild cities, the first human ship piercing alien skies, and his own reflection staring back through centuries of shared pain. The flood of experience didn't drown him this time. It embraced him. He understood, finally, that memory wasn't a burden. It was the proof of survival. When the light dimmed, the chamber fell silent. The queen's voice trembled slightly when she spoke. It is done. The core now holds our covenant. She looked at him, eyes bright. You are part of our history now, Elias Vance. He exhaled slowly. Then maybe there's hope for both of us. Applause rose. Not the sharp military rhythm of Earth, but the harmonic resonance of Elindran voices, layered in tones that vibrated through the air like song. It was not triumph that filled the hall, but something quieter, deeper, acceptance. After the ceremony, they walked together through the gardens suspended above the lower city. The air was filled with the soft hum of pollination drones and the scent of luminous petals that bloomed only after conflict. The queen's hands brushed one of the flowers, a translucent sphere that pulsed with faint light. They grow only in soil touched by fire, she said. A lesson, perhaps, in beauty after destruction. Elias smiled. Earth has something like that. We call them phoenix lilies. She glanced at him, curiosity softening her expression. Do they burn before they bloom? Every time, he said. They stopped at the edge of the garden where the wind carried faint music from the city below. You've changed us, she said quietly. And we have changed you. That's how peace works, he said. It's never one-sided. Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. You speak as though you plan to leave. He looked out toward the stars. I don't belong here, he said softly. Not entirely. Humanity needs someone to speak for what happened, to make sure they don't forget what peace cost. She looked away, her voice nearly lost in the wind. Then the stars will be colder without you. He smiled faintly. I'll come back if you'll have me. She met his eyes then, and for the first time, she didn't hide the emotion in them. You will always have a place here, she said. Even if the galaxy forgets, the core will remember. When he boarded the shuttle again, Harper met him at the ramp, her uniform scuffed and patched. So, she said, you're a living legend now. Just a man who shook hands with the universe, he said dryly. Same difference, she muttered, smiling. As the engines warmed, the queen appeared on the comm screen, her figure haloed by the light of dawn. Elias of Terra, she said. You once told me that peace begins with seeing truth. What do you see now? He looked at her image for a long moment before answering. I see a future that finally deserves both our names. The shuttle rose through the mist, the citadel shrinking below until it looked like a jewel floating in the clouds. The human fleet parted, giving way for his ship to pass. No one fired, no one challenged. Instead, one by one, they sent out coded pulses, the signal for recognition. Not surrender, not dominance, but acknowledgement. He smiled faintly. Maybe that was enough. Weeks later, back on Earth, the Terran Council convened to question him. The chamber was cold, filled with the faint hum of recorders. Captain Vance, the chairwoman began. You defied direct orders, compromised classified systems, and initiated unsanctioned contact with alien leadership. Do you deny any of this? No, Elias said. I confirm all of it. Murmurs spread through the assembly. The chairwoman's expression didn't change. And yet you claim success. Not claim, he said. Prove. He activated the holoprojector on his wrist, and the core's imprint filled the chamber. A vision of Valoran reborn, human ships and Alindran gliders working side by side, cities glowing with twin suns. This is what I risked everything for, he said. Not victory, continuance. For a long time, no one spoke. Then, slowly, applause began, not universal, not unanimous, but enough. The chairwoman leaned back, her tone softer. History will decide your fate, Captain. Elias smiled faintly. Then make sure it remembers the truth. Months passed. The alliance deepened, tentative but real. Joint research outposts formed along the border worlds, sharing technology and culture. The core's energy became a symbol not of power but of preservation. And though bureaucracy wrapped every act of progress in debate and delay, humanity's voice had changed. The stars no longer seemed divided into ours and theirs. They were simply there, vast and waiting. Elias often found himself back at the academy, teaching new recruits. He told them stories, not of war, but of bridges built in silence, of the way an alien queen once taught him that memory could be stronger than metal. They listened, eyes wide, perhaps not fully believing, but believing enough. Sometimes, when the night sky turned clear over the academy domes, he'd see two faint golden lights among the constellations, the twin suns of Valoran. And he would smile, knowing that somewhere beneath them, she was watching the same stars. Years later, when his hair had gone silver and his hands shook with age, he returned to Valoran one last time. The citadel greeted him with familiar warmth, its walls still alive with light. The queen awaited him in the garden, unchanged by time. Her people had lifespans far longer than his. When she saw him, her eyes softened. You came back. Told you I would, he said. Though I seem to have aged worse than expected. She laughed softly. Time treats the brave differently. He took her hand, feeling its cool strength. How long has it been? Long enough for stars to be born and fade, she said. But the memory of that day remains bright. They walked together through the garden, silent except for the wind. When they reached the heart mirror, he paused, gazing into the swirling light. Still dangerous? He asked. She smiled. Always. He leaned closer, and the pool shimmered, showing images of two figures, human and Alindran, standing together against the void. Guess it remembers us, he said. It remembers what mattered, she replied. He turned to her, his voice softer now. You were right, you know. Peace isn't an end. It's a story we have to keep telling. She nodded slowly. And you, Elias of Terra, have told it well. The light of the twin suns reflected in her eyes, and for a moment, time itself seemed to still. When he passed from the world that night, it was without pain. The core pulsed once, a wave of light spreading through the citadel and into the stars. The queen stood alone at the balcony, watching as the energy drifted upward, joining the constellation of his memory. You are remembered, she whispered, and far above, across human colonies and Alindran skies alike, the light of that pulse spread, seen by countless eyes that didn't know his name but felt his legacy. They called it the Dawn Bridge, a phenomenon that appeared whenever peace was signed between former enemies. Scientists debated the physics, priests called it divine, but those who remembered knew the truth. It was the core remembering, honoring the promise of one man who had chosen to see the human within what others called alien. The queen stood long into the night, the wind tugging at her silver hair. When at last she turned from the stars, her lips curved in a quiet smile. "He loved the fiercest alien queen," she murmured, "because he saw the human within. And I, in turn, saw the stars through his eyes." The wind carried her words across the citadel, across the planet, and out into the waiting dark, where memory became light and light became the story that never ended.